Now we move to our next speaker, Dr. Mario. He is a founder and chairman, leadership in Education Academy and Development, National Capital Region, Philippines. To please take the motion, I request the sir and introduce our delegates with the topic Managing and Leading Change in the New Normal. Over to you, sir.
Okay, so a pleasant morning, afternoon to each and everyone. I'm Dr. Mario Lucero. I am the founder, chairman of LEAD Philippines, Leadership in Education Academy and Development, Philippines. And I'm also a school principal, an international school in the Philippines, a graduate school professor teaching educational leadership and management. And I am a founder of 8 organizations and 2 educational institutions. So I'd like to thank, of course, my friend Dr. Pandali for inviting me here as one of your keynote speakers. And I would like to share with you my topic to you, which is about managing and leading change in the new normal. Okay, managing and of course leading change for quality education in the new normal. So I know that there have been a lot of countries who are now coping with the pandemic, and the Philippines, our country, is still under lockdown, and we had experienced a lot of changes in our curriculum, in the program that we have, and of course in leadership. So as a principal, I'd like to share with you some of the changes that we have. And I'd like to show you the metaphors of the new normal. So I have here noodles, okay, wherein it has different shapes, okay, and different probably forms. So this is how we see the new normal. In some country, they would see it in different way, but in our country, we see it, experience it in difficult times. And the problem was then we were not so ready in terms of infrastructure, in terms of technology. So leadership now becomes a problem, not only in the Philippines, but also across the globe. Okay, so what are the things that we need to change for ourselves? Okay, so what do we need to change for ourselves? So we need to change something like we have to be adaptive. We have to really look into some of our technical skills. Of course, for the family, we became closer with one another during pandemic. So we are so close with one another. For school, so for most of the schools here in the Philippines are closed right now, and we try to look into distance education, and the internet plays significant role in the teaching and learning process. Okay, and also significant change that we have for our community and for the nation. So with our community, of course, we have changed a lot, and we go into digital, okay, wherein most of the transactions are now digitally transmitted. Okay, so I'd like to quote Alfred North Whitehead, a British mathematician and philosopher. He said that the art of progress is to preserve order amid change and to preserve change amid order. Okay, so what is change management? So change management is complementary to leadership of change, and together with the leadership necessary for effective and sustainable change. So we need to really have sustainable change programs. And many studies and surveys show examples of how change management and how it can be improved. So we are trying to improve now the kind of management, the kind of leadership that we have right now. And what to improve in change management? I think number one is our concept of change. What is our understanding about what change is? Okay, so we know that change is constant and change is inevitable. So, but I'd like to emphasize, I'd like to highlight that change does not necessarily mean progress. Okay, so there is also this concept of commitment to change. Are we really committed to change from top management to the middle management to the rank and file? Okay, so another is that the way we communicate with people. Okay, so nowadays I think we communicate via this kind of platform, Zoom, Google Meet. Also, it becomes now a global community, yet local in terms of how we feel. So communicating is very important, but communicating virtually sometimes brings a lot of misunderstanding. So we still need to have sometimes face to face. Okay, the way we plan our activities, the organizational structure that we have, our direction. So we never had probably imagine, okay, the change of curriculum that we have, and how are these programs being implemented in school, and do we have enough resources? The problem now in the Philippines is that we don't have enough resources to maximize digital information, which means that people in the remote places still don't have access of the technology. Again, our culture also had changed. And when we change the culture, you really have to look into the contribution of our ancestors, okay, and the practices. We look into the best practices. That's the reason why we have this good platform of intellectual exchange to really learn from the sharing of all the, I think, the speakers. Okay. Now, so what is leadership? So leadership has been a continuous to be complex and a contested terrain. So leadership is an elusive contract, which I think a lot of leaders may have different definition of what leadership is. So we might have the concept of transformational leadership. We might have the concept of uh, leadership that is something charismatic in nature, bureaucratic leadership. So these are the leadership essentials that we have. So in the Philippines, I was able to conduct a study and I came up with one leadership essential and I call it as panoramic leadership. Okay, so leading change requires creating experience for people to reveal new possibilities. So we have to change, but we have to reveal new possibilities and look into some strategies, optimizing the culture of the organization while making an investment to drive academic growth simultaneously. Okay, so the three C's in effective change leadership is number one, I'd like to highlight communication. So unsuccessful leaders tended to focus on what behind the change. So when we explain to people the need for change, they would be able to understand that. So we have to communicate it and then collaborate. Okay, that's what we're doing right now. We collaborate people. We bring people together to plan and execute change, which is very critical. And our commitment. Successful leaders made sure their own belief and behavior support change too. Okay, so we have to be committed with our concept of change. So what is the role of managers in change process? So I mentioned a while ago that change is constant and we should know how to handle change. Okay, so to effectively implement change, managers need training and development. So we need this particular platform for us to learn with a lot of probably theories and best practices of great leaders across the globe. So there are key aspects of managing change. The purpose of change, okay? Our also responsibility and willingness to adapt change. We also have to look into the use of theories of management, the structural process elements, and political considerations. Okay, so when we try to look into changing, okay, so we also have to manage emotions and politics. It's very difficult sometimes to implement change because people are resistant to change. So therefore, we have to identify the key influencers in effecting change. Okay, so we map the political landscape of who will be affected by the change and assess influencers' receptiveness to change and engage ourselves with positive and negative skeptics. Okay, so this is one theory I think that will address a particular change management. So this is the dynamic capability theory. Okay, so this would try to look into strategies, okay, our ability to create, extend, or modify resources. It will look into the processes and dynamism of the organization, dynamic capabilities. Another one is this what we call distributed leadership. Okay, it is a conceptual and analytical approach to understanding the work of leadership. So it is concerned with practice rather than the role of the educator. So it builds the capacity for change and improvement. So I'd like to share with you the leadership model in the new normal, which is the distributed leadership, because this is appropriate for agile organization. Okay, it is being required to become digitally mature organizations, and it is something that would look into shared leadership for digital leadership, and also the development of collaboration and distribution of decision making for the digital age and dynamics of distributed leadership practices. So change entails risks, and risk entails mistake. So there are errors, there are mistakes, there are failures in, of course, effective change. So punishing those people who commit error may not be helpful. So what is the meaning of that? We welcome change, we welcome risks, and we welcome mistakes. And you should not create a blame-free learning culture. Okay? Or you should create a blame-free learning culture, which is necessary for successful and sustainable change. So we don't blame the pandemic. Okay? We don't blame COVID-19. Okay, so this is just a phenomenon that would allow us to become a better leader, for us to innovate, okay, and become sustainable in the future. There's also an ethical aspect of managing change. Okay, so ethical and social responsible change contributes to the well-being of all. So you look into the goal of change, the intentions, the process, the access, the outcomes, and consequences of change. So therefore, education and training plays important roles in effective change. Okay, so managing and leading change in the new normal is that take a gut check on your organizational purpose, be prepared to call an audible, engage your people by empowering them to be opportunity scouts, and embrace a new starting line. So we have to engage the stakeholders by connecting with them frequently. We have to establish a continuous communication channel, gather feedback to realign and reinvent, set up a strong reward recognition framework, and focus on the question of what's in it for me. Okay, so the characteristic of leaders, managers of change in the new normal, according to Chopin, is number one, we should be agile. Okay, so there's agility, resilience, and adaptability. So these are just characteristics of leaders in the new normal. Okay, we have to be a leader that is very responsive and has a competency for the digital age, and we have to really look into the understanding of the fourth industrial revolution, education 4.0. Now it's of course embracing education 5.0. So thank you. We will not go back to normal anymore. We are just being given the opportunity to stitch new garment, one that fits all humanity and nature. So thank you very much, and I hope you have learned something from my sharing to you this evening. Thank you for the invitation, Mom
Thank,
Gordon.
thank you so much, sir, for giving us such an informative lecture on the topic managing and leading change in the new normal. As we all know, because of this pandemic situation, we all have shifted from the offline to the online mode, and number of new things we have learned. So we are having queries. I request the IT team to please unmute Shri Devi. Shri Devi, you are unmuted. You can have your query as you have raised your hand.
Okay.
It seems like they might be having some technical issue. That's why they might be not be having the query in the audio form. If you are having any query, please drop your message in the chat box if you are not able to unmute yourself or you are not able to speak.
Yeah, okay, so I would welcome some of the questions that you would like to inquire. I would also want you to invite to become a member of our organization. And thank you, K.I.T.E.S Education, for appointing me as your international advisory board member.
So I have a one question. Which is the biggest change which you seen in the new normal?
Of course, the biggest change that we have experienced in the new normal is the shift from the traditional learning uh, modality that we have to distance synchronous learning experience, especially in our country. And that we usually did not open classrooms for the past school year, and now we have again another new school year, and still um, lessons are being delivered using synchronous and asynchronous modalities, which we capitalize and maximize the use of internet. And that I think is the biggest leap. But the problem is that not most of our students here have access to technology. So they would still have the traditional printed, but again, these are being done at home. So no face-to-face with the teachers.